let me just remind you that tomorrow we'll be reading in this book. You'll be doing it at home. We rarely do that. This is modern literature, modern English, so it's not going to be hard to understand. But it's what we're going to do tomorrow, and then on Thursday we'll review the questions. Yes.
Do you have a copy of the background?
Yes, I do.
I don't think I got them.
So if I fail to say it, this is ninth lit, and we're going to be reading at least part of the period from Murder in Cathedral. And wherever we stop today is where I'm going to try to stop all three classes at the same point. So we'll have that time tomorrow. I didn't realize this, but your class tomorrow, each of your classes is shorter than normal. Did you know that? I haven't looked at that schedule, but I think it's 45 minutes instead of 55 minutes. I'm not sure why that's the case, but that'll be the case. Also, I've scheduled this to release at whatever time tomorrow would be 1:10, because on Mondays we're usually around 1:10. So I don't know if that coincides with anything now. If the period's a little different, but it will release at 1:10, and it's whatever reading that I think we can do tomorrow. I'll assign that, and so you don't have to do it during the class period. You could do it at 8 o'clock tomorrow night if you wanted to. But the idea was that it's like we're going to be in school tomorrow, except you're at home. So when you get to, let's see, 9:15, which is when we normally meet on Mondays, or whatever time it is now that they've changed the timing a little bit, that's the idea, that you could work on my class during that class period. But you don't have to. You could do it at 5 o'clock if you wanted to.
Is all the homework due at 11:59?
Mine is due the next day.
Oh.
Spanish is due during at the end of the period.
So, that some people may choose for you to do that, so. All right, so, we've talked about, yeah, you got a question?
What was, well, when you get the chance, could you go over to question number 3 for this?
Right here?
Yeah.
The poor women? Yeah, all right, so we were kind of reviewing, remember why are Henry and Thomas upset with each other? Yeah.
Isn't it because Henry, wants the power, taken away from the church, and Thomas wants all the power, and, wants the church to keep the power?
Right, yeah, so Henry's trying to consolidate the power in the country, centralize it under him. That's what the king's trying to do. Thomas is trying to protect the church, which is his job. And it got to the point that Henry may have threatened Thomas's life. Thomas felt threatened, so he left to go to France, and now he's back, and he's got some problems facing him. Guys, I want to make sure y'all are listening. I just went over this. Just a reminder that there is a correlation between paying attention in class and grades on tests. I mean, that's duh. Of course there would be. It's not like if you miss it, you're gonna I'll get it later. It doesn't work that way. So if you miss it, you miss it, and it really helps you if you get it the first time, and then all you have to do is review it the second time instead of I never seen this before, because maybe you weren't paying attention. All right, so going back to number 3, the poor women, and by the way, we're on page 22, and the second priest there, and I don't remember which are all the priests are. But we met the chorus yesterday, and do you know who the chorus is and why?
It was right.
Poor women.
All right, they were the poor women. Why did he pick the poor women? Why did Eliot choose the poor women?
Thomas Becket was known as the champion of the poor.
Right.
The poor women.
So they give us a perspective that you don't get from anybody else in the book, because they're not priests, they're not knights, they're not Thomas or Henry, they're not a king or archbishop. There are very few characters here, but they are the perspective that we would be missing. Who are our tempters? Are you ladies the tempters? Okay, who's 4? Okay, you're 4? All right, so we will go through that today. So we're going to start at the second priest. we've done 4, and I think we've done 5, and we did 6, because we know each of the 3 priests had a different perspective. And now we're gonna look at, says, what is the chorus's reaction to Archbishop's return? We know that too. What is the chorus's response? Hayden?
They want him to go back because they think he'll bring trouble.
Right, they don't like change. Mr. Schilling this morning talked about, don't be afraid of change. If you didn't watch it, but he had a forum for the 11th graders. I don't think you were there. He mentioned, one of the things people don't like is change. And if anything, 2020 has been a year of change. And these people, these poor women are like you and me. We don't like change. Even if it's bad, we'd prefer what we know rather than what we don't know, which might be better, but it's, it's scary. Yeah.
Oh, they were picked, the 4 women were picked because Thomas is, you say the king of the 4?
Champion of the poor.
Gotcha.
Well, yeah, he's their king too, but Thomas is not their king. So the priest would be you, I believe. So here we go.
I thought the second priest was,
Yeah. They have now seen Thomas. Thomas is standing in front of them. It's the first time they've seen him in 7 years. So.
Oh my Lord, forgive me, I did not see thee coming, engrossed with the shadow of these foolish women. Forgive us, my Lord, you would have had a better welcome. We had been sooner prepared for the event. But your lordship knows that 7 years of waiting, 7 years of prayer, 7 years of emptiness, have better prepared our hearts for your return than 7 days could make ready Canterbury. However, I will have fires laid in all your rooms to take the chill off you, our English December. Your lordship now being used to a better climate. Your lordship will find your rooms in order as you left them.
Did you see any parataxis there? You remember parataxis?
Is that the use of like clauses, clauses without conjunction?
Clauses or phrases. Do you see an example?
Oh,
of
I
that?
do.
Where?
7 years of prayer, 7 years of emptiness.
Those are phrases with no conjunctions between them. They're just common. So he said, we weren't ready for you, but your rooms are ready. So Thomas.
And will try to leave them in order as I find them. I am more than grateful for you, or for all your kind attentions. These are small matters, little rest in Canterbury with eager enemies restless about us. Rebellious bishops, York, London, Salisbury, would have interpreted our letters. Filled the coast with spices and sent to meet me by some who hold me in bitterest hate. By God's grace, aware of their provision, I sent my letters on another day. Had fair crossing, found at Sandwich, Brock, Warreen, and Sheriff of Kent. Those who had sworn to have my head from me, only John, the Dean of Salisbury, fearing for the king's name, warned against treason. Made them hold their hands, so for the time we are unmolested.
but do they follow after?
For a little time the hungry hawk will only soar and hover, circling lower, waiting for the excuse, pretends opportunity, and will be simple, sudden, God-given. Meanwhile, the substance of our first act will be shadows, and the strife with shadows, heavier the interval with the consumption. All things prepare the event.
Right.
Watch.
So what is he anticipating? This is question number 8. What's he anticipating?
Trouble?
Read the part that he says that. Anyone? Freddie said it was trouble, so where do you see that in the passage?
Is it for a little time the hungry hawk will only soar and hover, circling over, waiting for that part?
Keep going.
Letting excuse, pretends opportunity, end will be simple, sudden, like saying there will be an end.
All right, so he's not being explicit, but he's saying something, this is gonna end. He's anticipating his death. Why should he? What has he already said that would indicate that he should be afraid for his life, or at least his life is in danger? What did he find out when he landed? Who was waiting for him?
John, is it John?
John?
Who? Oh, John, fearing my name, warned against treason, made them hold their hands. I'm not sure he was there, but what he found out that there were 3 men ready to kill him, waiting for him. And one of the guys, this guy named John, prevented them from doing so. So God intervened and prevented them from killing Thomas. So he knows that his life is in danger. Did you see the picture, the metaphor? He said, while the hungry hawk will soar and hover, circling lower, waiting, like a hawk, these assassins are kind of hovering, they're waiting. And when the time comes, they'll strike. So he's fully anticipating another attempt on his life. Now you have to understand what we're going to read here. These are people, but they represent temptation. All right, so what each one of these, there are 4 temptations or tempters, and they come on stage, because remember this is a stage play. They come up to Thomas and they tempt him by their speech, what they tell him. And so there are literal actors, but they clearly represent a temptation. What are temptations? What is a temptation?
I don't know how to say it, but like a temptation would be like lying to your parents if you're in trouble or something. Like trying to get out of something, I guess.
It's like something urgent at you to like do the wrong thing.
The temptation would be the thing that encourage you to lie to your parents.
Yeah.
That the lying is not the temptation. So it's what encourages you to do that in some way. It's always negative. Temptations, I can't think of an example where you'd be tempted to do something good. You might say it that way, but it's usually something negative. I know that in the New Testament, which is in Greek, I don't know any Greek, but the word testing and the word tempting are the same Greek word. Now I don't know if that's in every case, but interesting, God never tempts anybody, but he tests us. So when God's motives, if he tests you, are for your good. The devil's motives, when he tempts you, are for your bad. And so these are things trying to get Thomas not to do the right thing. What do you think the right thing is? What's he going to be tempted not to do? All right, Freddie?
They're trying to get him like, so they're trying to tempt him to like leave and like so that.
To do what?
To like leave and so there's no power of the church.
Okay, that probably has something. He wants them to quit, maybe go back. But just keep that in mind. What is it that what is the right thing to do? And these temptations are trying to get him from doing the right thing. So we're going to start with, you need to know each tempter, what they are tempting. And guys, probably, Matthew, it'd be a good idea if you had these questions out, because that's what we're kind of working off here. You need to know what the temptation is and how Thomas resists the temptation. What does he say to resist the temptation? All right, so we'll start with number 1.
You see, my Lord, I do not wait upon ceremony. Here I have come, forgetting all acrimony, hoping that your present gravity will find excuse for my humble levity. Remembering all the good time past, your lordship won't despise an old friend out of favor. Old Tom, gay Tom, Beckett of London, your lordship won't forget that evening on the river when the king and you and I were all friends together. Friendship should be more than biding time can sever. What, my lord, now that you
probably violins, but it's
Okay.
short for violin.
Okay. In the hall, laughter and apple blossom floating on the water. Singing at nightfall, whispering in chambers. Fires devouring the winter season. Eating up the darkness with wit and wine and wisdom. Now that the king and you are in amity.
Amity.
Clergy and laity may return to gaiety. Mirth and sportfulness need not walk warily.
You talk of seasons that are past, I remember not forgetting, or not worth forgetting.
And of the new season, spring has come in winter, snow in the branches shall flow as sweet as blossoms. Ice along the ditches mirror the sunlight. Love in the orchard send the sap shooting. Mirth matches melancholy.
We do not know very much of the future, except that from generation to generation, the same things happen again and again. Men learn little from others' experience, but in the life of one man, never the same time returns. Sever the cord, shed the scale, only the fool fixed in his folly may think he can turn the wheel on which he turns.
My lord, a nod is as good as a wink. A man will often love what he spurns. For the good time past that are come again, I am your man.
Not in this train, look to your behavior. You were safer, think of patience and follow your
It's
master.
penitence.
Oh, penitence and follow your master.
Not at this gate. If you go so fast, others may go faster. Your lordship is too proud. The safest beast is not the one that roars most loud. This was not the way of the king our master. You were not used to be so hard upon sinners when they were your friends. Be easy, man. The easy man lives to eat the best dinners. Take a friend's advice, leave well done, well alone, or your goose may be cooked and eaten to the bone.
You come 20 years too late.
Then I leave you to your fate. I leave you to the pleasures of your higher wishes, vices, which will have to be paid for at higher prices. Farewell, my lord, I do not await upon ceremony. I leave as I come, forgetting all acrimony, hoping that your present gravity will find excuse for my humble levity. If you will remember me, my lord, at your prayers, I'll remember you at kissing time below the stairs.
Leave well alone the springtime fancy. So one thought goes whistling down the wind. The impossible is still temptation. The impossible, the undesirable. Voices under sleep, walking a dead world, so that the mind may not be whole and present.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was trying to, notice now we have the second tempter, which Zoe is here. And so let's pause just a minute before Zoe starts and look back at this passage. Let's go to question number 10, 11, and then we're going to answer 12 and a couple of the others around it. Yeah.
We haven't got to 9 yet, though, have we?
Yeah, we have. We'll deal with that one in a minute and turn around page 24, yeah. So first of all, let's figure out the bigger picture, number 10 and number 11. With what does the first tempter entice Thomas? Why would this be considered temptation rather than a righteous course of action? So really number 10, we already answered that in a way. We said the tempters were temptations that were trying to keep Thomas from doing the right thing. The right thing would be to stay in England and fight for the church. The temptations are things or desires that are trying to keep him from doing that. All right, so that's really number 10. But we got to figure out what this temptation is. Have any idea? Yeah.
It was kind of confusing, but like, was it that like they were trying to tell him to like basically kind of like stand down and like not have as much power, and then like bringing back the old times when like he didn't have as much power and they were all like happy, I guess.
Yeah, mean, you're on the right track. It might help you if I divulge a little secret here. There are 4 temptations, and every one, at least the way we're going to remember them, start with the letter P. It's a little bit simplifying it, but that's okay. So this temptation starts with the letter P. It's one word. You said, let's go back to old times. Kind of part of it was, why don't you get along with the king? Why don't you make friends with the king?
Jeez.
Like you used to. Like you used to. You're on the right track, but we're going to use another one. And he said, remember the parties you used to give? You know, remember how much fun it was? Wasn't that great? And so we're going to say that the P stands for pleasure. You know, and that includes getting along with Thomas, having fun. They were big buddies. They had a lot of fun together. Why are you so serious now, Thomas? Let's enjoy life a little bit more. There are other words that would work, but I don't want to say them because he might be. But what is his response? And by the way, what would be wrong with this? What would be wrong with making friends with the king? Aren't we supposed to all get along? Isn't that the whole thing, we're supposed to do now, is get along with people? Be friends with people? So what's wrong with the suggestion? Why is that a temptation to do something wrong, to become friends with Thomas? Can you imagine a situation where the wrong thing would be to make friends with that person, whoever it might be? Can you think of where that would be the wrong thing? Friends, great. What would be a situation where the wrong thing would be to make friends? Great example. Yes.
Satan.
Of course. He's the ultimate enemy. And so anybody that is kind of the wrong person, they would make you do something, maybe in some way, encourage you to do something that was wrong. Trying to remember, one of my favorite proverbs, if I can get it right, is he who walks with wise men becomes wise. The companion of fools suffers harms. It's from the Bible, book of Proverbs. So you want to be wise? Now, it doesn't mean, Jesus said we even need to love our enemies. That's not what we're talking about here. You don't act like your enemies. That's not what he's saying. You don't become like your enemies. You're supposed to love them. So basically, the bottom line is, if you want to be wise, find wise friends. If you want to get in trouble, and find fools. That's a pretty strong word in the Bible. Hang around with fools, and your life will turn out badly. There's a real correspondence between who your friends are and the quality, what kind of person you are becoming. They have a tremendous influence on you.
So this one's tempting Thomas to by bringing back old times, use Thomas, and it's trying to make friends with Thomas.
Yeah, he wants to go back to when he was friends with Henry. Thomas was friends with Henry. And they used to have fun together. They used to have parties together. They had a great time together. That's why we come up with the P for pleasure. Don't be so tough. Don't be so rough. Why don't you just relax a little, have a good time? And the problem is, that's a temptation to divert him from what he's supposed to do. How did he respond to it? It's real simple.
You can't go back.
He says it on page 26. He says, you come 20 years too late. You can't live in the past. I can't go back to the way it was. So that's his response, and I don't know that it even asked you that, but you need to know that. I'm not sure there's one of the questions yet. So we stopped at number 8. We need to find 9 and 12. We've done 10 and 11. So let's go back just a minute. Look at question 9, slant rhyme, and one of the internal rhyme on page 24. Starting at the top of the page, on page 24, do you see end words that end in a line that have a slant rhyme to them? They're not They're not complete rhymes, but they're partial rhymes. And we ran into that all the way through Song of Roland. And most of Song of Roland was based on slant rhymes, not full rhymes. You remember what we're talking about? We're talking about vowel sounds that are the same, or consonant sounds that are the same. All right, let me give you some examples. Look at the fourth line down. Your lordship won't forget that evening on the river. The next one, when the king and you and I were all friends together. Now, together and river is not a complete rhyme, right? River and shiver would be rhymes. What would be together and, I can't think of a word that would actually rhyme with together.
Sever.
Okay,
Together.
together and sever would be more of a rhyme, but sever and together is a slant rhyme. And I'll tell you how it's achieved. It's the R sound, right? It's the together and the sever. It ends with the same thing. Look at over and recover. Over and recover don't rhyme, but they do have the same R sound. That's slant rhyme. Water and chamber.
Recover.
Okay, water and we're talking about slant rhyme. We're not talking about full rhyme, and that's why these don't completely rhyme with each other. Water and chamber, season and wisdom, the sound. However, although that's slant rhyme because that's the last word in the line, at the end of that little speech, I see an example of internal rhyme. You need to write it down. Internal rhyme. It's rhyme within a line. Most rhyme occurs at the end of rhymes, but internal rhyme occurs within a rhyme. Do you see an example of internal rhyme? Not slant rhyme, not near rhyme, but complete rhyme within a line. You see it? You looking? You're not looking.
We're still on page 27, right?
24, but that's all right. You might be one on page 27, but we're on page 24.
No, we are on 27.
Yeah, I was like following
Talked about our
along.
food stuff.
Yeah, we moved that. We're trying to answer number 8, and number 9, which says page 24.
Amity and gaiety.
Laity and gaiety would work. Laity and gaiety, that's complete rhyme. And it's all within a line, so that's called internal rhyme. These are literary poetic devices that if you do much more with poetry, which you will, you're gonna have to know.
Wait, what was the thing you told us that we didn't know but wasn't a question?
How did Thomas respond to the temptation? And we said the line was, you're 20 years too late. So that's an example of slant rhyme, that consonant sound, and internal rhyme. Are you writing this down? If you don't write it down, I promise you, you'll never get it right on the test.
Constant and.
We call it consonants, but you don't have to know that word. It's just the repetition of a consonant, the R sound. That's what created but you can use vowels too. It's another way to do the same thing. All right, now look at question 12. And we'll go to page 26. Now this kind of thing you probably won't be able to do tomorrow on your own, but at least you can try. And so on Thursday, after you try tomorrow at home on your own, we'll come back. So look at the tempter's speech. At the top, what is the rhyme scheme? Remember, rhyme scheme is the pattern of rhyme. Read it to yourselves. Where it says, then I leave you to your fate. I'll leave you to the pleasures, and so forth. What's the rhyme scheme? How would you describe the rhyme scheme?
Like A, B, like you turn on like saying that.
You could say it that way, yeah.
Like A, B, B, and then C, C, D, D, and then F, G, something like that.
Well, prayers and stairs,
Oh,
rhyme,
well,
so
then,
it'd be
yeah.
E, E. There's a name for that. Those are called rhymed, R-H-Y-M-E-D, rhymed couplets. So you need to know that name. When you have two lines back to back, that rhyme, then they're called rhymed couplets. And you notice, although the first word of the speech was late, was fate, what did it rhyme with? Look at Thomas's last word, you come 20 years too late, and then the tempter says, then I leave you to your fate. So the two lines connect each other there.
It's when two lines background.
Yeah. All right, so the temptation is, and I'm tempted to do one more thing. Maybe we don't have to go in a lot of detail. Look at the tempter at the bottom of page 24. And of the new season, spring has come in winter, snow in the branches shall float as sweet as blossoms, ice along the ditches, mirror the sunlight, love in the orchard, send the sap shooting, mirth matches melancholy. Write the word imagery at the bottom of the page. And draw an arrow up to where it says, snow in the branches shall float as sweet as blossoms, ice along the ditches, mirror the sunlight. Those are examples of imagery. Imagery, I'll give you a definition. You remember what imagery is? That's like one of the founding, building blocks or foundational blocks of a poet. A poet, that's what he makes his money, using imagery. Imagery are descriptions that appeal to the five senses. So if you've underlined them and now you've drawn an arrow to them, you need a pencil, Tim?
Yeah.
Here, take my pencil.
What you said, what was the definition?
It's descriptions that appeal to the five senses. So what sense does snow and branches shall float sweet as blossoms? What senses are those appealing to? Sight. What else? What else? Look at it. Snow and branches shall float as sweet as blossoms. Taste or smell. Smell sweet or taste sweet. It's kind of one of those strange words that it sounds sweet, She acts sweet. It covers a lot of ground. But you see it, you taste it, you feel it, snow, ice along the ditches, that's certainly the feel. So poets use imagery in order to share the experience. You may not know it, but that's why you like to read. If you like to read stories, you like to feel like you're there, and that's what this does. So we've done the first one. We've answered 9, 10, 11, and 12. We're going to Zoe. She's the second one. And it also will start with the letter P. So see what, and get ready, Thomas. It's a conversation between you and her.
And at last North Marlow and May. Now that I have recalled them, what sees first but separates not the present memories, and mouth against other earlier and later ones, those of the literature. See how the late ones rise, the master of policy, whom all acknowledge to guide the state in hand.
Thomas.
shall be the one?
the last month of the first.
What shall we give for it?
3/10 of priestly power,
Why should we give it?
for the power and the glory.
No.
Yes, or bravery will be broken. Calvin and Canterbury, Rome's ruler, self-bound servant of a powerless pope. The old stag circled the town.
No.
Yes, men must maneuver, monarchs also raging warlords, need fast friends at home. Private policies, public profit. Dignity shall be judged with decorum.
You forget the bishops whom I have laid under excommunication.
Hungry patrons will not starve against intelligent self-interest.
You forget the barons who will not forget constant curbing of petty privilege.
Against the barons is king's clause, tyrol's clause, chancellor's clause.
No, shall I who keep the keys, or what? No, shall I who keep the keys of heaven and hell, supreme alone in England, who blind and loose with power from the Pope, descend to desire a punier power, right? Okay. Delegate to deal the doom of damnation, to condemn kings, not serve among their servants, is my open office. No, go.
Then I leave you to your fate, your sin soars on board, covering the foolish falcons.
Temporal power to build a good world, to keep order as the world knows order. Those who put their faith in worldly order, not controlled by the order of God, in confident ignorance, but arrest disorder, make it fast, breed fatal disease, degrade what they exalt, power with the king. I was the king, his arm is better reason, but what was once exaltation would now be the only mean descent.
All right, before we go to the third temptation, we got to look at the second one. So we're going to do 13, 14, 15, and yeah, I think that's it. So anybody starts with the letter P? Yeah.
Oh, like power maybe?
It is power. All right, so the second temptation is power. Now we have to explain the temptation and the context of it. You want to do that?
Or, like the first stuff that he's talking about, he mentions telling him that when he was chancellor, he resigned and then became archbishop, and then they were saying that he should never resign being chancellor, and you shouldn't have ever made yourself archbishop, because that has more power, and they didn't really want that, so they're trying to get him to step down from archbishop again.
Good. We don't necessarily know who this person is, but he's encouraging Thomas to go back and be the chancellor again. The chancellor is, I guess this would be a good analogy, is the CEO of the government. He's the chief executive officer. Well, maybe that's not exactly right. Maybe he's more the CFO, the chief financial officer. I don't know how that works, but the king is the king, but right under the king is the chancellor. He runs the daily business matters of the state. So he said, why don't you do that again? What is his argument, basically? Why? What's in it for Thomas? What's in it for Thomas? What would be the temptation to go back and do that again? Well, I don't know if you said this, but he said right now as archbishop, you have very little power. You're under a powerless pope. You don't get to do really a lot of things. However, if you were chancellor, think of all the good things that you would do. Look on page 28. He said these are some of the things at the top of the page. To set down the great, protect the poor, beneath the throne of God, can man do more? Disarm the ruffian, strengthen the laws, rule for the good of the better cause. So he's saying if you became chancellor again, you could really achieve some good things. You could help the poor, you could protect them, you could get the bullies and the ruffians off the streets, you could bring law and order. That's what you could do as chancellor. You could do good. What's Thomas's rebuff or refutation of that? How does he refute that? Of course, he's still under the king, so he doesn't mention that, but that's just even as chancellor, you wouldn't be king, but he doesn't stress that part. What's his argument? I'll read it to you. Look, turn to page 30. See if you can explain to me his argument. No, he says, shall I, who keep the keys of heaven and hell supreme alone in England, who bind and loose with power from the Pope, descend to desire punier power, delegate to deal the doom of damnation, to condemn kings not serving among their servants? Is my open office? No, go. Let's see if anybody else can. Abby, have you figured out who? What is his argument?
Like you would have less power.
As what?
Um,
As archbishop or as chancellor? He claims that it's actually I would have less power. And how does he explain it? Well, I see as Archbishop Bronwyn, why does he have more power than, in a way, the king?
Because he's closer to God.
Well, for sure, but take that a little bit further. What does he have power over that a chancellor doesn't? And it's hard to imagine this with maybe today, but Dave, what do you think? What does he have? What does the archbishops have power over that a chancellor would not have power over?
The archbishop has power over excommunication. So, in their belief, they could remove someone from those who might go to heaven by excommunicating a priest.
He says, I who keep the keys of heaven and hell. Because they had the power of excommunication and other things, they could see that you go to heaven, or they could see that you don't go to heaven. I don't think you and I can understand that, because that's not how we understand it works, and it doesn't. But that's the way he understood it. Now, in a way, how does a pastor or anybody who's a Christian have more power than the President of the United States, whoever that may be? What if you have the power to do that as president, even the president can't do? See, we believe that you are priests. You are, as Christians, it's a priesthood of believers. Every Christian is a priest in some way. And priest's job was to represent the people to God. So that may not be helpful, but what do you have the power to do? You. And you.
Make people Christians.
Of course, we don't make them Christians, but what do we do?
Tell them about Christianity.
The President of the United States, as president, that's not his job. That is your job and my job. We have the power, in a sense, to lead people to Christ. In fact, that's what we say. We know we don't save them in any way. So that's his argument. You want me to be chancellor? When I've already, in his role, as he understood it, he had the power to even do more than bring people to Christ. He could keep people away from Christ. And so that's his argument, yeah.
Are these tempters like by Henry, or are they just like for Henry, supporting Henry?
Well, remember, a temptation is always against you. A temptation is trying to get you to do something wrong. So they're not for Henry. But what do they represent, really? Because temptations, you're not going to have somebody walk, hey, I'm a temptation. No one's ever going to tell you that. But they may be a temptation, because what does a temptation always do? What does it always? We said it tempts you to do something wrong, but where does that desire to do something wrong? It didn't come from the temptation. Where did it come from? In our own heart. So temptations only encourage you to do what you already want to do, because remember Jeremiah 17:9 rather, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. That's what the Bible teaches. So remember, you don't need too much help doing wrong. It's natural. You want to do wrong. And the temptation is right there to help you. I'll get you what you want. And so all these temptations are against Thomas. But he basically says, no, because I've already got more power than Chancellor. Look at question number 15. One of the last things he said, well, it's almost the last thing he says, I was the king. His arm, his better reason. But once exaltation would now be only mean descent. So he used to be that guy. But what is he saying now? He used to be the guy that we're talking about, the guy that could help, do all that job as chancellor. But what would happen now if he became chancellor? What direction? Would that be a promotion or a demotion for him? It would be a demotion in his eyes. He would be less powerful. He would be stepping down, would now only be mean descent. He used to love it, but he doesn't love it anymore. And what does he mean? He says, I was the king. His arm, his better reason. He wasn't the king, so why does he say he was the king? His arm. Shouldn't that take you back to Song of Roland? I was the king's right-hand man, which is the next best thing to... So, one more time. So, in that sense, he was like the king. Because all he had to do is nudge the king. You ought to do it, king, or don't do that, king. He had that much influence. And so, in a sense, he could say he was king in some respect.
So was he like the Senate now, if you look at our government?
We don't have anybody in our government. That's what that's what the president is. He's the executive officer of the country, the executive branch. Everybody is under him. Even the vice president doesn't exercise the kind of authority. The chancellor, apparently, he actually did run the country. It'd be like having the president and then the next guy was kind of running the show, and the president was just the head and made the ultimate decisions, but this other guy was running. That's not how it works for us. Yeah.
What was 14? You feel that?
Well, yeah, didn't you hear it? We said it several times. Look on page 30. Anybody hear it's in Thomas's speech at the top. Yeah, Zoe.
Constant curbing and heavy privilege.
Very good. Say it again. I'm trying to find it.
Something very top.
Yeah. Constant curbing. Notice it says the king's cause, Charles' cause, chancellor's cause. And what about this? Delegate to deal the doom of damnation. Take your pick. Any and all of those are examples of alliteration. So we are on page 30. We started on page 22. I'm going to assign you, and I'll put it on for tomorrow. I'm going to assign you about 8 pages. Of course, you won't be talking to anybody. You'll have less time, but hopefully it will be a challenge. So I'm going to give you 8 or 9 pages to read for tomorrow, starting with the third tempter on page 31. So good luck, and